religious authority in modern churches, it seems straightforward enough. But recent studies show that 68% of congregants have experienced some form of controlling behavior from spiritual leaders that goes far beyond biblical guidance.
That's such a striking statistic, and it really highlights how widespread this issue has become in religious communities.
You know what's fascinating about this whole dynamic? When we look at the original Greek texts, particularly in Hebrews 13:17, the word commonly translated as obey actually means something closer to be persuaded by. This completely transforms our understanding of pastoral authority.
Hmm, that's such a crucial distinction. So it's really about rational persuasion rather than blind obedience?
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. Studies of early church structures show they intentionally used a multiple elder system, specifically to prevent the concentration of power we often see today. It was like an ancient checks and balances system.
Well, that's fascinating about the historical context. How do you think this shift happened from that collaborative model to what we often see now?
The transformation really accelerated during the medieval period, but what's really concerning is how some modern pastors have taken it to new extremes. I've documented cases where religious leaders dictate everything from marriage partners to career choices, and even mandate specific prayer times like 7 a.m. sessions before work.
That level of micromanagement seems so far removed from the original intent of spiritual leadership.
And you know what's particularly telling? When you look at 1 Peter 5, written by someone who actually witnessed Christ's ministry firsthand, it explicitly warns against leaders lording it over their congregations. Peter, who had every reason to claim ultimate spiritual authority, was actually advocating for the opposite approach.
That's such a powerful contrast to what we often see in modern religious leadership structures.
Recent surveys indicate that about 42% of church members feel they need their pastor's approval for major life decisions, which is completely contrary to the biblical model of personal spiritual responsibility and direct relationship with God.
You know what strikes me about these numbers? It suggests we're seeing a kind of spiritual codependency developing in many congregations.
Exactly right. And here's something that really puts it in perspective. The word minister literally means servant in its original context. Jesus himself addressed this in Matthew 20, completely inverting the power structure people expected. He basically said, "You want to be a leader? Become a servant first."
That servant leader model seems so revolutionary, even by today's standards.
Well, what's particularly troubling is how this misunderstanding of authority often leads to spiritual abuse. Studies show that approximately 34% of people who leave churches cite controlling leadership as their primary reason for departing.
Those numbers really highlight the human cost of misinterpreted spiritual authority.
And you know what's interesting? When we look at successful, healthy church communities, they typically share three characteristics: distributed leadership, emphasis on personal spiritual growth, and clear boundaries between guidance and control.
So, what do you think is the key to helping churches maintain that healthy balance?
The research suggests it's about creating transparent accountability structures and, most importantly, fostering an environment where questioning and personal spiritual discovery are encouraged rather than suppressed. Um, think of it as spiritual mentorship rather than spiritual dictatorship.
That's such an important distinction for both leaders and congregants to understand.
Looking ahead, I think we're seeing a significant shift in how younger generations approach spiritual authority. They're more likely to seek multiple sources of guidance and maintain their autonomy in decision making, which actually aligns more closely with the original biblical model.
That's really encouraging to hear about this return to more collaborative spiritual guidance.
The bottom line is that effective spiritual leadership should empower people to develop their own relationship with God while providing guidance and support, not create dependency or control. When we look at the historical evidence and biblical texts, this was clearly the intended model all along.